Hi guys, welcome back to Manifest with Harmony. I just totally cut off my last live. Hopefully some of you guys are still free to come back, ask questions. I didn't get a chance to see the questions you guys had written, but the last thing I was talking about was was Lyndall. And Lyndall definitely had like a lightness about him, and Lyndall has a lightness about him, and he flows. Like you could tell that like when he's talking about the stuff or anything really, there's just like this ease about it, and that's really like where you want to be. You really want to be at a point where you have a general like approach of ease to things, because you can analyze like the teachings all you want, and you can practice them, but you're not really practicing them unless you've adopted this ease, because once you've accepted the simplicity of it and the practicality of it, then you naturally do adopt this ease. It's the approach of ease to things. So I guess like if you're gonna use the word master to master something, and I don't really use that word, but if you do see it as mastering something, then if you master Neville's teachings, you would have that ease. Hey, thanks for coming back, Jackson Brown. Let's see. You're saying, I would love to see you collaborate with Joseph Rodriguez. Do you know him? No, I don't know him. The name sounds familiar. I think someone else has written something. Hey, morning, Lisa. So I think someone else asked me about that in the past, but I probably looked him up, but I don't remember which one he was. So no, I don't know like offhand right now who Joseph Rodriguez is. I don't remember his work, but yeah, I'm open to like talking. I don't look for it. I don't look for collaborations, but when the opportunity presents itself, I'm usually open to it. So cool. Yeah, I don't know. I honestly, I don't even watch that many videos on Neville or law of attraction stuff on YouTube, except for like just Neville recordings or Abraham recordings sometimes. So I do sometimes, but it's not the bulk of what I watch. And there's a lot of people out there I know teaching. So yep. Yes, Lisa, you finally caught a live. Actually, the others might tell you that I had started a live for 22 minutes, and then my 3-year-old woke up, and I had to stop it because when she wakes up at night, she needs to come and give me a hug and stay with me, so until she falls asleep again. So I have her camping on the couch over here right now, while she lets me finish doing my work. And I call this work, but it's fun for me. So yes, I wish I had what you guys were asking before. A couple more of you were here before. Let's see. I just think it would make for an interesting conversation. Also looking forward to the Lyndall collaboration. That would be fun. Yeah, I'm looking forward to talking to Lyndall. That'll be interesting. Like, cause you guys know he's kind of animated the way he is from his short video clips on YouTube, and he's an interesting character. So yeah, that will be a fun collaboration. But do check out DeCarlo's channel. I haven't listened to all the interviews, but he does have stuff with Lyndall. Let's see. Jackson says you were talking about states earlier. Yeah. So if you get into the state, my mind is like always on 5 things at one time, and I'm not really a multitasker. So getting my mind back on track is kind of a funny process. But yeah. So just if you get into the state of what you desire in the first place, then it is, you do end up like we were saying, like with Lyndall, you take things lightly, you get into states so much easier, because you're not going from this like low vibration place to to your preferred reality in your mind. That's not what you're doing. You're just basically just lingering in a pretty good place, you know, and then it's easy to jump into a frequency that matches your desired reality. You know, when you're not going from a low place to like a high place. You're just going from one place to another. It's just a different way of seeing things. Um, Actually, we were watching stand-up comedy a couple hours ago and on Netflix, and the guy was saying how well I don't know if you've heard of him. Oh my God, I'm gonna say his name wrong. Gad Elmaleh. I don't remember, but so he's Moroccan from France, and he was doing a show in New York, and he was talking about how, you know, obviously like he was making jokes about American culture, and he was saying that he finds it funny how, you know, customer service is, you know, people are so nice, and you know, because they're not in Paris, and you know, in America, the servers at restaurants and the people who help you in stores, they want to help you, because it's, you know, just that's what they're hired for, because they're friendly and they want to help you. And he was saying that it's just strange things that people say, like strange phrases, and he thought it was funny how people say, "I'll be more than happy to help you," and then he's like, so what does this mean, more than happy? Like, there's happy, which is already a pretty strong, you know, sentiment, and then so what is more than happy? Like, how can you be more than happy? Is it like, like it just seemed like a silly concept, you know, for someone to say more than happy. So I think that what we do is like, depending on how we see happy, because we always like have this goal of being happy, happy. I just want to be happy. I just want to be happy. But happiness is not like one state. Like, it's not a goal. Like, happiness is something that exists on so many frequencies, and that's why like maybe it can get confusing with the whole law of attraction, like Abraham's teachings and Neville's teachings, because Abraham's is more like on a scale, and Neville just calls them states. But they're not like the emotional scale is not necessarily like boom, 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 like up and up to down or down to up. It's kind of, you know, all over the place, or rather, it's not solid steps of vibration. Like, okay, this vibration includes all these things. No, it's very specific vibrations, and each vibration is a state. Each frequency is a state, and it vibrates differently than the next. So the state, it's not like one state of being happy. There are many states that you would call being happy. I do use revision, yes. So revision, it's like it's a special circumstance where I would use revision. It's not like a regular thing, like an everyday thing. You can, though, definitely, if you want to use it for small things, you can. Instead of using revision, I just align with the preferred feeling of right now. I don't tend to go back to it, but with revision, something that maybe is on my mind for like a few days or a week, and then I might just go back and revise it in my mind really quick. It's not a big process. Like, none of these are big processes. Like, they're practical and they're immediately effective, but like, you don't have to worry about like it being like this big step. Okay, I'm going to revise this, and am I doing it right? It's really so simple. You just go in your mind and you go through the memory of it, and you just remember it differently. Like, you go through it in your mind as though it happened the way you prefer, until you feel a slight change in emotion, and then you know it's done. So that all in all takes like a minute, and you just assume that because it does have that power, you just assume that accomplished that, and it does. Hey JD, manifest your pregnancy, twins, boy and girl. Good for you. Cool. C is already done. C as already manifested. More than happy is the explosion. Okay, so Lisa, that's a good point you bring up, that more than happy is the explosion. But it's not always, because I'd say that the feeling of naturalness is really what you're going for. Um, the, the explosion could be like, you know, could be like, oh, that like really amazing feeling of like excitement and happiness, but that's not necessarily what it means. I think the explosion for me means more of like just that moment where you feel that you've entered the state and everything around you feels different now. Different sensations, even as you're just laying there with your eyes closed, imagining all the sensations feel different. Like you just feel like you've entered something new and everything feels different. That's what it means to me. And then that's basically one part of it, and there's the feeling of naturalness to it. The feeling of naturalness though is my go-to. I don't really focus too much on like what Neville calls the explosion, because that happens sometimes, but it's not necessary. And I don't think it's something that means more than happy. I think that it's just a state, and it's how the state feels as compared to the state you're going from. So, can you discuss letting go of gripping, especially when you see changes coming? I tend to go back to the world of Caesar-like behavior. How do we release and let go in such circumstances? Okay, so Abraham has a great quote for this, and it says, if you could just practice the sensation, like that feeling of letting go of the oars, it's like, think about like if you're just like rowing, and you're in a boat, you're like, I gotta get there, I have to make sure I do this, I have to make sure I'm on top of it. Just like those tense fists, or your tight jaw, or your really tense like muscles in your body, even your thigh muscles, your calf muscles, just relax them. Like open your hands. Like this works for me often. I have like a hair tie twisted in my fingers, but okay, just imagine like in that moment where you feel like you need to let go of the control of like the physical control or like the mental control. When I say mental, I say you want to focus on emotional control more, right? When you're working with Neville stuff. So that need to control things through planning and this, the Caesar's world way. Just in that moment, just release your hands, like open your hands up. And even if your fists aren't actually clenched, they're probably not open. So in that moment, if you just take whatever tightness you have in your hands and you just stretch it out, and shake it off, like see, like automatically you kind of have this like breathing out. So when you breathe out, you know that already that the energy is moving, and what you don't need is leaving your body, and your energy, like it's different energy flowing through you now, because the energy that wasn't serving you is leaving, that tension is leaving. So that's really something that I recommend you do if you're trying to let go of control and the ways of Caesar's world. It's very simple, but it immediately affects the way you're thinking and the way you're approaching a subject. So just like really focus on like this, just like sensation of letting go of the oars, and let the boat take you where it's gonna go. Because you have to trust that if you let it go, it's gonna go in the right, take you to the right place. JD says, I believe we must not try to change things in our state, but literally change the whole state. Like the many homes to me is like the many realities. I use revisions to change my past. Okay, so yeah, it does help if you see it as the changing states as just walking out of one room into another room. Just choose another room to walk into. That's what you're doing. That's the state is, because the state is always there. And it's kind of hard sometimes to see it as forcing a state in and out of you, and you just being there, as opposed to you are actually mentally walking into another room. And that's just such a helpful, I think, way of approaching it and seeing it, because the power is, within you, and you are moving energy. You are moving the energy. You are molding it. So let me see what was back here. I've heard that expression before, and I used it myself. I'm always more than happy when these which means I don't enjoy. Um, yeah, that's funny because so it all depends on what your definition of happy is. If your definition of happy is pretty happy, and then there's like really happy, that would be the more than happy. So, um, yeah. Lisa Marie says, I always fall asleep as I'm revising when I do it laying down, so I have to sit up. No. Yeah, I often fall asleep while I'm doing this stuff too, but it doesn't really matter because ultimately, um, you just train yourself to stay awake while doing it, and then you accept that if you fell asleep during it, then it's okay. You could just do it again in the morning, or you can do it again the next night. There's always the opportunity. Um, so never like feel like, oh man, I missed it. That's how um, you feel when you feel like in a rush or it has to be done. But when you see it as a game, it's really more of like, oh, okay, that's okay. I can do it now, or I can do it now, or I can do it now. There's always opportunity to do it. So JD says, I use revision to change my past childhood. I feel that in order to make it real, one must, even when recall it or say to others, have to talk about it as how one revised it as. Yeah, or you could just not talk about it, and just as long as you feel, you accept that it's been changed, then definitely. Your brain doesn't know the difference between real and imaginary. Yep. Race, will you please? I'm having problems for over 16 years with my other. So yeah, no. Two pups. Working the crime, separation anxiety. The neighbors, of course, do not like it. I leave them with music for anxiety. Cry, bark. What would you recommend me to do next? I recommend for you to assume that it's no longer an issue. Just assume that you are, having a harmonious relationship with your neighbors and your dogs. It's you can't, in situations like that are just very in your face. Um, it calls your attention. It's begging for your attention, right? Because it's loud. It's about the barking. It's about neighbors complaining. So there's no way that you can use your reasoning mind to solve this. You have to just hand it over and assume that there is peace in your home and with your neighbors, and just know that it's all taken care of. And you'll know that you've done that because it'll just feel different, and you'll feel ease about it, and you'll feel relief about it, and then you won't feel the need to think about it anymore, even if they're still barking, for a couple more days. Um, Practice, assume the feeling of it being a non-issue. And I know it's easier to say than do, but it's not that hard to do. You just have to approach it. Approach it a couple times. Approach it again, again, again. Okay. I mean, I don't know if this has happened to you, but I feel that we all have different senses that help us feel what we wish as if it is. Some of the sense of smell, others sight, others touch. Definitely. Some are more visual people. So when we say our mind's eye, it doesn't necessarily mean in a visual sense. You can visualize it, but it doesn't matter if you're using the sensation of imagery in your imagination, or the sense of smell or touch or or taste, or whatever it is. It doesn't matter which one of your senses that you are incorporating in your imagination, as long as it gets you to that feeling. So let's see. I want to fall asleep imagining a science, not revising. Imagining a science, as Neville says, feeling into the wish fulfilled. Imagining a scene. Yeah, but the thing with imagining a scene is that most of us who come to Neville after having learned a bit about visualization overall, we tend to kind of overdo the emphasis on the visualizing scene, and we feel like we have to make it a lot longer than it needs to be. Like honestly, this is my experience. This is what I'm saying. Don't worry if you fall asleep during it, because in my experience, we usually think that imagining the scene has to be longer than it actually has to be. A lot of times, just a few seconds of feeling yourself into that scene and falling asleep is excellent. That's all you need. Have a great day, guys. My post-surgery meds put me to sleep. Thanks for joining us, Raven. I have a positive weekend. Awesome. You were saying something about aphantasia and feeling over imagination. Yes, so definitely, Jerome. Thanks for reminding me. So I had been saying, and before I got cut off on this live, on the other live, I was saying that it really is about the feeling. And this is the same thing I was just mentioning about the senses, so I'm glad you brought it up. It doesn't matter if in your mind's eye, we call it the mind's eye because it's vision, but not, it's visionary. And visionary is not the same as, your physical sense of seeing. So you can be visionary, you can be visioning, as in, like, just for me, that means putting yourself in that situation. It can be through imagery, it can be through, I think touch is powerful, and of course it depends on people, but in my experience, if you touch, what's in there, if you touch, a velvety couch, if you want to live a life where you have a beautiful home and you want like that nice feeling couch, just imagine that where you're sitting, where you're touching next to you, it feels really good in your hands. If you're looking for a relationship, then just like feel that embrace of the person. The sense of smell for that is so important. Just the scent of that person. It doesn't even matter if you know who it is or don't know. It doesn't matter. Just incorporate the sense of smell. That's really, really good too. What are you hearing? What are you hearing in that state? That's the whole congratulatory scene that Neville says. That's only one version of going into your mind, seeing through your mind's eye, and going into your mind's eye and experiencing through your imagination. What are you hearing? What are people saying to you? Where are you? Do you hear birds? Do you hear music? What culture? Are you in a different country? What time of day is it? Are you hearing owls at night? What is the scene? You have to use their different senses, play around with it. I'm saying you have to only because it's such an awesome experience. Like, you have to, like, people say, oh, you have to try this. Like, that's what I'm saying. Not you have to in order to accomplish anything. It should always be for the pure enjoyment of it, not for the accomplishing the physical manifestation, because then it's just a job. Let's see, I want to make sure I get everyone's messages. Thanks for me. Thanks, Jackson. I feel like I'm a mess with these lives because I'm like all over the place and just raw. I'm just very raw. So thank you. I'm glad you appreciate that. Just got back on. Hey, awesome. Amal? Is that how you say it? Amal? Hi, Army. How are you? Good. How are you? I talked myself through some of my visualizations, to be honest. Yeah, that's cool. JD says, can you please share one of your manifestation experiences that surprised you the most and has been one of your most victorious? So let me read a few more questions because I need to put a little thought into that, and it might be a long story. I can't think of what scent the other person would have. Okay, so this is perfect. Okay, if you can't think of what scent the other person would have, just create a feeling that you want to have when you are experiencing that scent. And this is exactly how you can manifest a relationship without knowing what the person looks like, because you don't have to know what they look like. You don't even have to imagine what they look like. You just have to know how you want to feel when you see them. So just know how you want to feel when you smell their scent. Okay? Armenia needed a new boiler, central heating and hot water, and imagine it there and let go, and I only took one small action with 5 minutes back. Now I have no boiler. Yep. Yeah, because let me guess, Lisa, you don't have any emotional attachment to your boiler. So you know desperation about it. If you don't have desperation about it, then it comes right away. There are so many ways for things to come to us so easily. We just don't want to see it that way because we're so stuck on trying to figure it out, you know? I have to think of a perfume I like, or yeah, you could definitely think of a scent that you like. And then the funny thing is that that person will probably be, you know, have the impulse to start wearing that for whatever reason. And they'll probably attract that scent. Going to make some homemade kamut pasta with fresh tomatoes. Nice, from the garden, and send you virtually some. Yes, thank you. I don't know if you guys have heard of uh, Grandma Gina. She has a YouTube channel called Buon Appetiti. Her last name is Petiti, and all her videos are called Italian Grandma Makes, you know, whatever she's making, and I just love her. I love her videos. She's very adorable. So let's see. Yeah, my sleep schedule is completely off, Lisa. So let's see. Luxury sun, yes. No, I wasn't desperate. I had to keep telling the guy to wait till after lockdown to install it. It would have cost me over 2,000 for installation. Also got underfloor insulation done. That's perfect. That's amazing. Term that you are looking for your. Ha! That's funny, JD. You say that. Um, I mean, that's funny because I set the intention of something just like for skincare wise. I just put it out there. I was thinking, you know, I was looking for something um, just to kind of freshen up my skin or whatever, my face. And then of course, you know, I somehow manifested this cream. Um, it's called Egyptian Magic, and I've been using it for like 2 days, and I really like it. Like I'm not wearing any like foundation or powder or anything. I'm just like wearing a tiny bit of eyeliner, and like I feel like, thank you. I felt like my skin looked good, so it's funny. Your comment is a manifestation of that, of my feeling that. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, okay, let's go back to JD's question of share one of my manifestation experiences that surprised me the most and has been one of my most victorious. The one I always tell, it's like my obvious like story is how I manifested my relationship. I still call it the biggest because it really went from just one, you know, level to complete different level, you know, in my life, because the way my vibration just changed and changed and changed to a point that I was on a level of attracting completely different things in my life. That's really why I talk about that the most. And also, it's something that I saw as very big, and it's something as that most people see as very big. But after that, I've learned that to not see things as so big, because when you see them as big, it takes longer. And not only that, but it's harder to convince yourself to trust the process. And you shouldn't have to convince yourself to trust the process. It should be just easy. It should be, it should flow, and you should just, once you recognize you have a desire, give thanks for it and know that it's on its way, right? So it's just the most, you know, I don't want to say by far, because financially I've also attracted a lot of things that were surprising to me. Like, for example, one of the things that in terms of financially, I guess you could say, that I attracted, that I was surprised by, was when I was looking for a place to stay, and my daughter and I were living for a couple of months at my dad's place, and my dad does not have like enough room for all to stay with him very long, so it was looking pretty impossible to find a place that at that time was in my budget, and was, you know, in the local school district. So I kind of got to a point where, you know, I took the advice that I give other people, because when you're emotionally involved in something, I get it. I totally get, like, when you ask me questions, I know you guys know so much about the law of attraction or about Neville's teachings, but when you're emotionally involved in it, sometimes we don't see as clearly. But so when I needed a place to move into, and I wasn't I wasn't getting anywhere with like logic and actually trying to find a place. I stopped trying to find a place, and I just assumed that it was done and it was going to show up. And what actually got me to the point of letting go of that was when we were staying with my dad, and he said to me that he had told some of his friends, if you know of any place, let me know. My daughter's looking for a place, a 1 bedroom or even a studio, within a certain budget. And everyone, and he said, he's like, yeah, I was talking to my friend today, and she said that you're not going to find anything for anywhere near that price in this neighborhood. So when he said that, like, I immediately kind of felt this lightness. Instead of being upset about it, I realized, okay, this is the perfect opportunity to take something that makes absolutely no sense and there's no logical way of how this would happen, and then change it to a knowing within myself that it's already done. And that's what I did. And we ended up finding in an even better neighborhood than I used to live in, which was already a good neighborhood, like in a even better part of the neighborhood. We found a perfect 1 bedroom place that was perfect for us at the time, and it was within the budget, and there was no logical way that would have worked out, but it showed up like a day or two after I just assumed that, okay, I'm gonna just push this. I'm gonna assume it's done. And it was one of those moments where you feel within yourself that, like, when someone outside you is saying, I don't know what's gonna happen, and like it's really like on the inside that something they don't know, even though it's not a reasoning thing, it's not a logical thing. You just know within yourself, like, haha, but they don't know, and then that was it. So I guess that's maybe something I wanted to share. Hey Tony. Seeing it as big. Jerome says seeing it as big is pre-feeling it into the state though. Let's see, which goes of why persistence is key. Yeah, if you're seeing it as big, then you really have to match it with an equal appreciation and gratitude for it. You have to match it with as much belief as big you see it. And you really shouldn't see it as big, because your part is not to think about how big it is, because for the universe, or for God, for your God self, it is really not hard. There is not hard for you to get exactly what you want in a much quicker time than you believe. So it doesn't really serve us to see things as big. Thanks, Lisa. Attention minus effort. Yeah, it's really just attention. It really is. Are you focusing on the presence of what you want, or are you focused on the lack of what you want? That's really what it comes down to. Let me fix this. Okay. Lisa says I needed a fence done at the back of my garden. Oh yeah, I remember that story. That was good. It broke and someone pulled. Yeah. Yeah, someone actually just came and put a fence up for Lisa when she didn't even have to do anything. So it just showed up. That's how things happen. Yep. JD says one of my biggest manifestations was getting married to my fiance of 16 years. Imagine my wedding ring on my finger. I will sleep with a pillow next to me and feel it was his chest and creative space. My closet for his clothes, even bought him clothes and placed it there for him. I did not do it thinking specifically on him. I released it and just assumed I was happily married. Yep, very good. Jackson says, I think you just touched on something big when you said opportunity. It's all about perspectives and recognize the opportunity. Yes, and it is big, and I'm glad you saw that. I'm glad you saw how big that is, because it is a big deal. It's a big deal. When you can start seeing what you would have seen as obstacles, and you can now see them as opportunities. I mean, it sounds cheesy and cliche, but this isn't in the sense of like typical self-help of like obstacles are really opportunities, and that has its place too, but this is actually you recognizing what you used to label as an obstacle. You realize that it is an opportunity, not just an opportunity for growth, but it's an opportunity to change your perspective and see it as the one who's already having it and experiencing it. Yeah. You're welcome, Jiggy. Thank you for sharing. That's what I did. I just saw the fence there with my eyes closed and felt happy. Still no idea. Put it through a great job too. Yeah, and we should, what Lisa's saying, we should definitely do for more things in our lives, because honestly, just closing our eyes, or whether or not they're closed doesn't matter, but if you could just focus on that space and see in existence what is not physically there. What does it say? Jesus called things that were unseen as though they were seen, and then they appeared. So that is the basic process that we forget sometimes. Doing the work without it being work. Yeah, it really shouldn't feel like work. If it feels like work to you, then there's a reason I wanted to do this live, and it was really just to remind ourselves, and this is big too, and I don't know if some of you might see it right now or not, but a lot of times we feel like things aren't manifesting the way we want because something's not working, or something's off, or you can't get yourself to this or can't get yourself to that. But a lot of times what it is that we have to take a really hard look at ourselves and what we're feeling, and admit that what we're feeling is not in alignment with what we want. It sounds simple, but we're not, a lot of us usually are not willing to do that. Most of us at certain times, everyone at one time or another, it doesn't matter how much of a master you are, at this, there will be times where you are confused as to why things, are working out in a way differently than you prefer, and it's almost always because you're not taking that really hard look at what you're going through, emotionally within yourself, and what frequency you are staying on. We don't realize that we're actually inhabiting a state that is the state that we don't want, and yet we're struggling and wondering why things around us, aren't showing the state that we want. You actually have to enter the state. You have to clothe it with your consciousness, the state that you prefer. Not feel sorry for yourself for not being in the state you want, not reasoning why you ended up in the state you don't want. It has nothing to do with the evidence, it has nothing to do with the hurt. However hurt you are about something, let's say it's a relationship, because it's really easier for me to explain things with relationships, because there's so much energy flowing there, and a lot of times we just assume that it has to do with the other person, but it's actually there's nothing that you manifest, and there's nothing that someone else can say to you that you yourself are not aligned with in some way or another. Like, you are in a state, and if you're in a certain state, that person, whether or not they know it, will act by impulse and say to you things that are in alignment with the state that you're in. So you'll hear what you're in alignment with hearing, regardless of who you're in the room, who you're in a relationship with or in a conversation with. That's why Neville said that in the Bible it says, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He says that the whole meaning of that metaphorically is that um, we act by impulse, you know. A lot of times we don't realize why we say things that we didn't, in that moment we don't know why we said it. It's because the other person is in a certain state, and that's what we had the impulse to do without knowing why we're doing it. So it's not really about fault. Yeah, Lisa brings a good point there too. Just if you feel like you're trying to control something, then just let it go. Like do that letting go thing with your hands, and just like letting go, and release your grip, physical grip, and you'll be able to easier. It all corresponds. When you're feeling like you're controlling something, you will physically feel like you're controlling and tense. When you're physically feeling controlling or tense, then that's how you're actually, running emotionally too. So Jerome's asking, do I talk myself through my scenes? Um, I don't focus on the talking. What I've been doing lately is, okay, so I don't get a lot of physical exercise lately, or for the past lot of lately. So what I do is like I'll do like stretches and exercises at night before I sleep, and then it's basically like yoga or Pilates, but I just do whatever I feel like doing that moment because I just listen to my body. And so what I've noticed is that in those moments where I feel very relaxed, I really like to incorporate my I ams, like in those relaxed poses or like moments where I'm just laying down and just relaxing. It's just like a perfect opportunity to do my I ams, and it's like when you do those I am statements, or you can call them affirmations, it's like being in a scene. It's like building a scene and entering a state, because it is entering a state, because what you're doing is you're declaring who you are now in specifics that make you a new person in one way or another. And it is like being in a scene because you're becoming someone else, and you're building a whole new life for yourself in that moment. So sometimes I'll talk myself through visualizations in that sense, or in similar ways, but I won't do as much talking as typically, in visualizations. I won't do as much talking as listening. Like I'll listen for what I'm hearing in the scene, or to other people. I'll listen to other people and their voices and what they're saying. Like those are more the things that I'll elaborate on in my scenes. Yep. Lull yourself into the state. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Because when you're most at ease is really the best time to when you're most at ease is that state akin to sleep. I mean, even if you're not gonna just like fall asleep in that moment, when you're so at peace, it's really close to that state akin to sleep. So it's also really beneficial. Your conscious mind is not arguing or fighting in that moment. You're not angry about anything. You're not resistant towards anything, and you're not really looking for reasoning. Your reasoning mind is not like looking to jump on things and figure out how to do it. It's just more about being in that moment. All right, let's do. Okay, one more question. We'll do Jackson's question. Can I ask you about your perspective on reality? Do all our God selves create a collective reality, or does every God self have its own reality? Just curious about your take. Okay, so this is what my take is. My take is that, like when you're a kid and they say, um, you know, it's not, it's not, you're not the center of the world. You're not the center of the universe, right? Like sometimes that, people say that to kids, like, because kids are like, oh no, it's all about me. I want this, I want this, I want this. Okay, like, so you might tell your kid, or you might have heard this when you were younger, You're not the center of the world. Like, you're not the center of the universe. Like, there's other people you have to consider. So I understand that in like, the sense of like teaching of how to share and how to consider other people, but actually you are the center of your universe, because you're having your own life experience. So there's only you in your world, and everything else is a reflection of who you're being in that moment. Everything else in your world is happening to you, is being experienced based on what you are doing in your own consciousness. So let me see, I'll go back to your question so I can be more specific. Do all our God selves create a collective reality? Or does every God self have its own? So every God self has its own reality, and it's constantly changing, it's constantly evolving. Even when we think we're stuck, it's part of evolving and expanding. That all benefits. When you're stuck and you think that you're not benefiting something, or if you're going through cycles that you feel like you can't break, that is actually benefiting the entire God selves, or the collective consciousness, I believe, because there's nothing that goes to waste. So if you feel that moment you're not benefiting from it, it's benefiting something in someone else's consciousness and someone else's experience. So hopefully that made sense in some way. But obviously, like, we're all sharing this like physical earth. So if you are experiencing something in your world, then you are contributing to someone else's world too, but only when they're in alignment. They're only going to accept and receive from you what they're in alignment with, and you will experience it as a giver, in a way that you are aligned with. And a lot of times we don't understand how we're even contributing to other people's lives in what we would see as a positive or negative way. So I don't think that we're meant to understand that. I don't think that it's very important for our experience here, to know how we overall, as like overall mass consciousness, affect each other, like on a world level. I don't think that's that important for us to understand, because you don't need to understand that as long as you accept and understand your effects on your own world. If you understand and pay attention to how you are the God of your own world, and how you are God of what you're experiencing, and you are creating everything you're experiencing, then you use that information to for good. Usually, like, if you understand your power, then you'll never feel a need to do something to assert that power, to assert another type of power. You know what I mean? And then overall, that's like, some people talk about like saving the world, or doing good to make the world better. There is no making the world better. There's just making yourself better, and you can't force someone else to be better or to think better. If someone is, you can influence them, but that influencing happens on a much higher vibration than most people are trying to do in the first place. So focus on your own God self and your own world. That's what I recommend. That's how I see it. Thanks, JV. Love you guys too. This is like kind of like, I want to say unreal, but I shouldn't say that as like a love attraction coach. Like, yeah, this experience is awesome. How we're able to connect like this, a platform like this. So, yep. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Jackson. So we can't get people to understand this till they're, yeah, you can't. Most people are vibrating lower. Yeah, and even by saying that, like, most people are not vibrating low, because most people in this world, like, let's face it, most people are not watching the media, because a lot of people don't even have access to media. I'm not saying most people don't have access to media, but there are parts of the world that we don't even, know what it's like there. So we have this idea that most people are vibrating low, but I don't think most people are. I think the people who are just really into the media, or are really trying to assert their control they're vibrating low, but you know, I don't think that's, you know, as much as we think. It's just me. That's what's visible, maybe I'd say. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Yeah, thanks so much for joining me, and sorry guys for that cut off earlier. My daughter just fell asleep on the couch behind me again, so that was good. Thanks, guys. So yeah, I will see you guys next time. Usually, like if I announce like when I'm coming on a lot to do live, it's usually through my Instagram page. So if you guys care to get noticed, you can find me there. And I will see you guys next time. Have a great day, night. Bye, guys.